Hello students, welcome back. Hope you all are good. So from this video we are going to learn an interesting topic which is adaptations from the chapter 10 Organisms and Population. So without further ado, let's get started. So what is an adaptation? In simple, adaptation, it can be a behavior or a physical appearance or some internal modification or changes that help the organism to survive and also to better fit in its environment. So in simple, a structure or behavior that helps an organism survive in its environment. So now let's see what is adaptation and the definition of adaptation in detail. So in biology, adaptation, it's a very dynamic evolutionary process. Though it is dynamic, it takes very long time. Slowly the changes will take place. Okay, so that actually helps the organism to fit better in its environment and also enhance their survivability as well as enhance their evolutionary fitness. So this adaptation is of phenotypic, something which happens due to the genetic mutation over a long time, and due to this genetic mutation, the appearance of the organism will change. That process we can also call natural selection. Say for example, with this moth, over a time, what happened? This light colored moth in Western countries, after industrial revolution, they started forming a dark color pigmentation on their body. So this kind of adaptations are known as phenotypic. This happens due to the genetic mutation and it also takes little time. So this kind of changes takes place due to natural selection, and I'll explain you why it has changed the color in our live class. Okay, now, and something which is adaptive trait, that also passed down from the generation to the another generation by organisms. And each adaptations, if we take this phenotypic or adaptive trait, something that has been passed on or something which is learned, will have functional role for each and every individual species. So that will be that maintains, and it's been evolved by the process natural selection. So when you talk about adaptation, we have three types. The basic three types of adaptations are structural, behavioral, and physiological. Let's see one by one. So, what is structural adaptation? As the name implies, it is related to the appearance, the internal as well as the external structure of an animals, which helps the organism to adapt better to their environment. Say for example, some modification in their body parts. Okay, so if you look at this shark fish, you can clearly see there are a lot of structural adaptation which helps the organism to better fit in its environment. If you look at the teeth, it is made up of cartilage, as well as they are very sharp, and their structure is also totally different, which actually enables the organism to go and predate and hunt very easily. And their skins, if you look at the skin as well as their fin, enable them to swim very fast. So these are some examples for the structural adaptations. Okay, so we can say the teeth, body covering, shell in the arthropods, quills, scales on the fishes. And this structural adaptation also two other types, which is many animals show this process known as crypsis, which in simple we can say that as camouflage. And also many animals just imitate like other animal to avoid predations. Okay, let's see one by one what is camouflage, what is mimicry, so that you will understand in detail. So what is camouflage? So before that, I would like to tell you what is crypsis. So in biology, crypsis means it is an adaptation that makes the animal to better fit in its environment, blend in its environment. In simple, other animals won't be able to detect these animals very easily. So if you look at all this picture, you can clearly see, according to the places they are living, their outer appearance, right, their structure have adapted well, so that it will be very difficult or hard for other organisms to detect. So if you look at these insects also, you can clearly see if I didn't put any circle around it, it would have been very difficult for you to identify this insect on the litters, especially on the leaves, right? So this kind of process is what we call crypsis, and animals exhibit this kind of adaptation are called cryptic animal. Now, so in simple, we can say this camouflage. Simply, this allows animals to blend into its environment, and it makes other animals very hard to single out these individuals. So examples we can say like this insects and chameleons and reptiles, many have this kind of adaptation which helps the animal either to avoid predation and also helps other animal to predate or to go and hunt other animals. If you take polar bear, this has this perfect camouflage which helps very hard for other prey animal to detect so that it can easily go and hunt. And if you look at this insect, since it has perfectly camouflaged itself according to the litter or the leaves, so it will be very hard or difficult for other animals to come and predate upon it. Okay, so this is about camouflage. So the next one, if you look at this picture, what can you see clearly here? These two are a completely different species, and if you look at these two are completely different species. Okay, this is a moth and this is a owl. This is a predator and it is a prey animal. Okay, likewise this snake is highly poisonous and it is not poisonous. So you can clearly see, right, this moth is looking just like this owl exactly, right? So this kind of adaptation are called mimicry, or in simple we can say mimicking. It will just imitate like the predator animal like the owl so that it can avoid being eaten. Okay, so this kind of process is this kind of adaptations are called mimicry. Likewise, this snake is highly poisonous. If you look at this outer appearance, it looks so scary, right? So it will make other animal very hard to go and also to hunt upon this animal. So likewise, this animal also has perfectly has a same adaptation like this animal so that it can be avoid it can avoid being eaten. So in simple, mimicry means imitation, imitating like the other animal so that it can escape from the predation. Okay, so mimicry allows one animal to look, sound or act like another animal so to fool predators into thinking it is poisonous or dangerous, right? If I say for example this exactly look like this owl, so when other predator or even this predator goes, it will be really fooled because of the outer appearance, right? So it looks like exactly like this owl. So this kind of adaptations are called mimicry. Now you might understand the structural adaptations, different kinds of structural adaptation exhibited by the animals. Now let's get into the behavioral adaptation. So as the name implies, it is something related to the behavior of an animal according to the situation or under different circumstances. Say for example, so if you look at this penguins during extreme cold, what happens? All these penguins gather together and make a very tight pack so that it can avoid being, getting himself killed by the very extreme cold. So this kind of behavior helps the animal to survive. So any type of habit or behavior that helps the animal to survive are called behavioral adaptations, and it can be of different types. Generally they are two: instinctive or innate or learned. And we also have survival, seasonal, behavioral adaptation. I'll be briefly explaining you all these things now. So when we talk about innate, this is something we can also say instinct or something inherited through the genes from the parents. Say for example, you don't have to teach a bird to play, a bird to fly or a beast to fly as soon as they hatch out. Likewise, you don't have to teach fishes to swim. like humans, obviously we tend to teach them, but at one point they will be working on their own, likewise speaking, right? So learned is something we can say that humans we can give humans as an example, something that is learned by experience, like observing other animals. For example, if you take humans, we learn other language from other humans by learning, and also riding a bicycle. So these kind of adaptations are called learned behavioral adaptations. Now let's talk about the survival behavior of an animal. So if you look at all this picture, everything denotes a behavior of an animal, which actually helps the animal to survive in its environment, as well as helps the animal to produce its next generations too. Yeah. So what are some survival behavior of animals? Adaptations of survival behavioral adaptations of animals. When you talk about food, so different animal exhibit different kinds of behavior when it during its feeding. Say for example, this predator animal, especially lions, tigers, they exhibit this kind of behavior before going and attacking an prey animal. They'll be hiding and moving very slowly. So this kind of behavior is called survival behavioral adaptations. Likewise, when you talk about prey animals, if you look at this centipede, what happens as soon as you touch it, just fakes death. So it resembles as if it is death, as if it is dead, so that other animal will assume that it is dead, so that it can avoid being eaten. Likewise, you have a lot of rats, snakes exhibit this kind of survival behavioral adaptations. Now, other animals, if you take lions, cats, or dogs, they all have this territory making adaptation. What is territory? Which means this is my region, no one should be allowed. So, this is my house, no one should be allowed. That is what we call territory. A specific region which will be marked with their scent, which in simple, they will just go and urinate on the places inside their territory, so that other animals will not come and occupy it. And you can also see many animals showing defensive action, which is also called survival behavior, like protecting the resource and food, mates, offspring, all these things. And another important survival behavior of adaptation of animal is courtship. So what is courtship? It is nothing but finding its mate by showing different kinds of behavior. Say for example, birds exhibit sexual dimorphisms. Say for as I told you, the male birds will be looking very attractive. They will show a lot of different kinds of behavior to attract its female. So this kind of behavior is called courtship, and it comes under survival behavioral adaptations. And parenting, this is also an important survival behavioral adaptation. Yeah, and using that structural adaptation, if you look at all this picture, you can clearly see different animal have different structure which helps them already to survive in its environment. Using the structural adaptation, animals also exhibit different kinds of behavior when it is threatened. Say for example, this mammal, it will spray a very bad scent smell gas outside when it is threatened. And this frog, the using their outer appearance, it will just threatens other animals like the snakes. And this hedgehog also quills, which means it just projects its hair when it is threatened, or when it has observed a predator in front of that. So this kind of behavior is called defensive behavioral adaptation. And apart from that, we have seasonal behavioral adaptation. Say for example, animal moving from one place to other place in order to avoid food scarcity, water, and also to find a good place for its offspring, and also to go and reproduce. Hibernations, some animals exhibit, in winter time they will simply go and sit and do nothing. And estivation, during summer time, some animals exhibit this kind of behavioral adaptation. And migration, as I told you, they will group of animals moving from one place to another, and they'll be just, it will be kind of a circle. It will be throughout the year, they'll be moving different places for the different reason, for to get its food, to reproduce, to avoid predation, to avoid food scarcity, and all these things. And hibernation is a process, as I told you, it's a kind of adaptation. This hibernation also comes under physiological adaptation, because during hibernation, the body metabolism will be dramatically reduced, which helps to conserve their energy. So the examples of hibernation, we can say that these bats and woodchucks, birds, all these things during winter season, to avoid um, to avoid food scarcity especially, and also to avoid extreme cold, they will be going and sleeping throughout the winter season. So since it has this kind of behavior is exhibited during a particular season, it comes under seasonal behavioral adaptations. And estivation, like birds, woodchucks, and bats, this amphibians and snakes and all, during summertime, it will be very hard for them to go and get its food. To conserve its energy, they'll be simply in dormant stage, which means they'll be in inactive stage, which helps them to conserve the energy. So studying this kind of behavior is what we call ethology under natural conditions. Okay. Now we have finished behavioral adaptation and the types of behavioral adaptation. Now let's get to the physiological adaptation. So these adaptations helps the organism to survive in their environment with unique niche. Say for example, if you take lions, they have large canine teeth as well as very well developed digestive mechanism to digest raw meat. Okay. So likewise, in physiology, we have another two best adaptation, we can say hibernation and estivation. Remember, this hibernation and estivation is a kind of a behavior that comes under behavioral adaptation, which is exhibited during particular season. And also during this hibernation and estivation, the physiology of the species changes. Hence we also include this hibernation and estivation in physiological adaptations. So in physiological adaptation, we can also take mammals. Since they are warm-blooded, so under different climatic condition, they have to adapt different physiological mechanisms, which helps them to survive. Say for example, if you take this polar bear living in the polar region, they have grown a very thick fur, which helps them to maintain its body temperature. Likewise, almost all the mammals have specialized hair according to the environment they live. And if you take reptiles, they are also cold-blooded animals, and they are supposed to they cannot maintain their temperature. So to avoid many extreme environmental conditions and also to protect themselves, they have very well developed scales, and different species they'll have different scales, and many species will undergo hibernation and estivation. And they lay eggs on legs on the land, and the leg structure and position, if you look at it, it perfectly made the animal to survive in its environment. So these are some kind of physiological adaptations. And you can also take amphibians. If you take amphibians, they are cold-blooded animals, but still they have perfectly adapted to live in both aquatic and land environment. And when you look at the respiratory system, the physiology, when you look at the respiratory, in during the larval stage, what happens? They respire through gills and skin. When it grows an adult species, they respire through lungs. So these are some kind of physiological adaptation which we can talk about. Now let's talk about the general adaptations of aquatic and terrestrial animals. So far we have seen the three types of adaptations in animals, right? Structural, which is related to the structure of an animal, which can be internal or external. Then we also study how different animal under different circumstances exhibit different kinds of behavior to survive better in its environment. Then we have seen physiological adaptation, where animals exhibit different kinds of metabolisms in different uh, situation. Right, now let's see the common adaptations of aquatic and terrestrial animals. Since both aquatic and terrestrial environment have different kinds of environmental conditions. Say if you take terrestrial, which means land region, the physiochemical parameters as well as environmental condition is totally different from the aquatic environment. So according to the environment they are living, many land and terrestrial and aquatic animals have adapted to select suitable habits and niches to survive. Okay, now let's start with the adaptations of aquatic animals. So if you take adaptation of aquatic animal, let's talk about the fish. Okay, if you take fish, they have well developed fins for different purposes. So like if you take this pectoral fin, so this fin is known as pectoral fin. So this fin helps the animal to stabilize as well as balance in itself while moving. And if you take caudal fin, this is the caudal fin, it acts like a rudder which helps to change the directions. And if you look at their body, it is completely streamlined, and their muscles also myotomes muscles which myotomes muscle which perfectly enable the organism to move to very rapidly. Since they have streamlined body structure, they can move in a fraction of seconds when it is threatened by the predator. And another few kinds of examples of adaptations of aquatic animals. Many animals have gills, and different animals have different types of gills and different types of adaptations. So let's talk about the general fishes. So this region is known as upper column. So if you open this region, you can find gills inside this fish. So these gills are nothing but blood cells which perform this respiratory process. And we also have air bladder, or otherwise called swim bladder, that is present in almost all the aquatic animals, and different animals have different kinds of buoyancy mechanism. So what is the purpose of this air bladder or swim bladder? It is nothing but a simple layer which filled which completely contain air inside it. Say for example ஒரு டயர் எடுத்துட்டோம்னா டயருக்குள்ள ஏர் இருக்கு இல்லையா, ஸோ அது மாதிரி. So it fills it contains a gas inside it which helps to float the animal and also provide buoyancy. And this line is known as lateral line. Almost every fish has this lateral line which performs as a rheoreceptor, so which helps to echolocate its object. Say for example, if it wants to detect food, it will use this rheoreceptor. And if you take sharks and other fishes, the lateral line present in the sharks helps to detect the water pressure. Likewise, to protect itself and also to maintain a lot osmotic pressure, and also to protect a lot of mucus glands that is present inside this integuments, which is nothing but hard layer, is protected by the scales of almost all the fishes. Now, let's talk about the adaptation of terrestrial animal. Okay. So these are some adaptation of terrestrial animal which are given in your book. Say if you take earthworm, this burrowing organism, they are constantly exposed to a lot of different sediments and soil. So to avoid erosion, to avoid being damaged by the movement when it does during its momentary process inside the soil, what do? They completely secrete mucus which helps to keep the animal moist, at the same time prevent a lot of skin aberrations, right? And likewise, if you take the insects, arthropods, it has a perfect trachea, and it is perfectly covered by the external skeleton. So this trachea, since it is perfectly and covered by the external covering, which this perform a proper respiratory process. And if you take vertebrate animals, their body has different cellular layers, and also they have well developed respiratory system which actually helps to prevent the water loss of the vertebrate organisms. And there are some animals which sometimes lose water. So they compensate that water by from the prey that it gets. So say for example lions or tiger, when it hunt the deer or anything, so if it already lost too much of water, that water will be replaced from the food that they are eating. And if you look at the birds, they have excellent nest making and breeding habits before rainy season, so that their juveniles can go and eat its food. Because during rainy season, what happens, the availability of food will be increased. So they have this kind of adaptation, so they go and migrate to a particular place and reproduce during summer before rainy season, and so that their juveniles can go and eat the food and survive better in the environment. And if you take camels, they have very well developed evaporative cooling mechanism, and also to prevent water loss they excrete concentrated urine. So these are some adaptations of terrestrial animals. Again, if we get into each and every category, you will get to know the adapt different types of adaptation according to the environment they are living. So let us just generally recall what is structural, behavioral, and physiological adaptations. I want you guys to go through this table and learn by yourself. And I've also uh, uh, given some exercise for you guys. So I'm just going to show you three pictures, and I want you guys to find out which kind of adaptations each picture represent. So look at this picture. All these fishes are swimming in a pool. So we can also say it is this kind of fish character is called a school of fish. This can be called school of fish. And why they are actually gathering together? It's because they can avoid a predator. So and find out kind of adaptations, and look at this bird, and it tries to attract its mates with the help of attractive dimosexual dimorphism, the color as well as, and also they have an excellent defense skill. So find which kind of adaptation. And this squirrel is actually hiding its nuts for the winter season. So find out what kinds of adaptation is this. So that's all, guys. I want you guys to find out what kind of adaptation each picture represent. So then I'll see you guys in the class. Take care. Bye bye.